All right, well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the event today. It's we're on part of our DSM Forward series. The series is presented by the Greater Des Moines Partnership and is part of our DSM Forward initiative. Our goal with all of these is to help business leaders connect, share, and exchange information and resources related to moving forward into this next phase of reopening. The partnership's been publishing industry playbooks, business playbooks, FAQs, and other resources that you may find very helpful. The link at the bottom of my slide there, dsmpartnership.com/DSM Forward, is where you'll find all of that content. So good this morning, we're being joined by Drew McClellan, top dog at McClellan Marketing Group. I've known Drew for, 12 years now, I believe, Drew, that we've known each other.
I think it's longer than that.
Is it longer than that?
Oh my gosh.
So. Oh, wow. Drew is truly a marketing expert. I've leaned on him for many years for his advice and knowledge, and truly understands what customers are looking for. So I would ask you all, logistically, just go ahead and make sure your microphone is muted. If you want to turn off your video, that's fine. And what I'd ask you to do is go ahead and open the chat window. And what we've been doing is using chat as a way to at least initiate the question. So if you have questions, even as Drew's talking, go ahead and put them in there. I know Drew pretty well. He'd prefer to be interactive along the way than talking to his PC this morning, which is, we all have done that. It's kind of challenging. And I will let you know the recording of this will be made available after the event, and we'll copy that link out to all of you. Well, Drew, with that, I think we're ready for you to take over the event and share your screen, and we'll begin.
Okay, I just want to correct a very important thing. I would never be looking at a PC, Mike. You know that.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Drew,
never.
I now am a Mac person. I know we used to do the PC and Mac stick.
Welcome
to the Mac person.
Welcome to the dark side. All right, I'm going to share my screen with you guys and then get set up. Okay, so I am hoping that you are seeing my deck. Is that correct? Is that what you're seeing, everybody?
Yes, we are.
All right, great. So I want to just talk a little bit about what our reality is, and then we'll get into some action steps. My goal is to give you some very specific things to be thinking about doing or considering doing as you evolve from the distance open that you may have been to an actual open that hopefully most of you are getting to or getting back to the office. So just a quick introduction. Hopefully most of you are at least familiar with me. I've been around for 30 some years here in Des Moines. McClellan Marketing Group actually is celebrating its 25th anniversary this year. So knock on wood, it seems to be working. And I've written for the Business Record since the early 2000s. So hopefully you've interacted with us and our work somewhere along the way in those last 25 years. And I write for a bunch of places and I speak at a bunch of conferences. So here's our reality is that as much as, I don't know about you, but I have many times since March said, man, I want to redo on 2020. I just want to go back to what was prior to COVID. But unfortunately, as we all know now, that's just not going to happen. So the good news is that the phase that we're in now is not the new normal. It is a temporary abnormal, but it's going to be here for a little while. And one of the challenges of this temporary abnormal is that everybody, and I'll show you some statistics in a little bit, but everybody is really coming at this from a very individualistic sort of point of view. And so there is not going to be a one-size-fits-all solution for your customers or clients. They're going to range in their reactions. They're going to range in their needs. They're going to range in their sort of expectations. And so this is something that you and your team are going to have to navigate to. And I can't stress enough how critical it is that you spend a fair amount of time talking to your team about how you are going to provide customer service moving forward. Because in many cases, it's not you who is interacting with the customer. And so you want to make sure that your entire team, your employees, are really confident in how they should behave, what they should do, and we'll talk about more of that in a bit. When we talk about motivators in advertising and marketing, fear is a very powerful one. And so it's why you see a lot of ads showing you what horrible thing would happen if you don't buy this product or service. Because psychologically, fear is pretty hard to tamp down once it gets a hold of you. And so understand that at some level, very few of the customers you're going to interact with have no fear. It's really about how much fear they have. Even people who think this is overblown and it's a political scheme, or whatever they think, even those people who are sort of dismissing COVID or think that the lockdown and all of the things we've gone through for the last 2 months has been sort of ridiculous. There is a kernel of fear in them as well, right? They're seeing that people are dying, and so just know that that's going to be an undercurrent of every interaction that you have for a little bit. And obviously, especially after the last couple of weeks, everybody's emotions are pretty raw. We're raw because we've been in our houses for 2 months. We're raw because we've been trying to homeschool our kids and have discovered that they're not as delightful as we thought they were during the school day. We've got all of the civil unrest going on in our community and in our country, and the news is bombarding us with highly emotive news, whether it's about COVID or it's about racism or whatever it may be. There is not a lot of escape for people. And so everybody's emotions are very raw. And I suspect as you're interacting, even with your own family, your friends and customers, you are seeing this play out, and that people are pretty rough right now. Everyone's on an edge. We just don't know which one. And so here's one of the interesting things. I mentioned that everyone has some fear in them, but there's this cocktail of emotions going on inside of everyone right now. And it's this weird blend of fear and uncertainty and loss, frustration, but also just elation at getting out of the house. And people are so giddy and excited that even those emotions are heightened. I met a couple buddies for lunch earlier this week. It was the first time I've been in a restaurant since mid-March. And one of the things that I noticed was how everybody was a little louder. Everybody was laughing a little harder. They were so excited to be out and about and be doing something that felt normal. So again, you're going to have this crazy mix of emotions, and no one you interact with is going to only have one of these emotions. So you just have to sort of recognize you're dealing with some fragile folks, and it's not just your customers. There's a fragility for you. There's a fragility for your team. And so in general, I think this next season, as we get through the summer and we open back up and we're all interacting again in what feels like a more quasi-normal way, even though we're wearing masks, I think there's a fragility for everyone. And so we have to handle everybody with a greater dose of grace than even prior to this. So also recognize that because of this heightened emotions, all of those emotions are distorting people's perspective. So little things will be magnified, and you can control to a certain extent what things get magnified. So little gestures of kindness, little forgivenesses, little flexibilities will feel great to your customers, and you can really use that to your advantage. Or little slights are going to feel bigger, or little boundaries are going to feel more restrictive. So just know that everything you do is being examined through a lens that is bigger and more emotional than you intend it to be. And you're probably seeing that, again, in your personal relationships and at home and all of that. So our memories and our perspectives are not accurate right now. And so one of the things that, one of the realities, I think, for many businesses of every ilk is that we have all bent over backwards to be able to keep doing business, despite the lockdown, despite if you're a retail establishment not being able to have anybody in your shop and all of that. And some of the ways that we've served our customers, they like. And so we are going to have to look at how we have done business over the last 2 months and not just chuck it all because we can put the open sign back out, but really think about what parts of how we served our customers did they actually love more than how we used to do it? And how are we going to handle it if we don't want to do it that way anymore? Or how do we communicate that even though you can, for example, come into my shop, I'm still willing to deliver if that's what you want me to do. So be thinking about, because they've only had this, whatever this new service is, this new opportunity for 2 months, but that perspective, to them, it feels like, I don't know about you, but this last 2 months does feel like forever. So for them, it feels like they've always been able to do this. Hey, Mike, by the way, just an FYI, because I'm showing my deck, I can't see the chat right now. So if somebody asks a question, can you just interrupt me and we'll stop and I'll answer the question.
Yeah, that's great, Drew. And by the way, when you're doing that on Zoom and you're in this presenter mode, if you just press your escape key, it will bring back your chat.
And I can still see my deck?
Yeah, you should be able to.
Well, let's try that. Do you guys still see my deck?
Whoops, no, that didn't work out so well. Sorry.
Okay,
bad on me.
Now, how do I figure out how to get back to that then?
Share screen again. Sorry, my bad. This is what happens when you let me talk to you, Drew.
All right, I'm going to stop sharing and reshare. So sorry, guys.
Fair enough.
Welcome to the technology of all of this. Yeah.
My bad. And so far there have been no questions, so I will let you know. Whoops, now we have your whole screen.
Yeah, I know. I got to just click the presentation button. So while we're doing this, so my point is, everybody's coming with different emotions. Everybody's coming with different expectations and a different memory of how it used to be, regardless of if that's accurate or not. So now would be a fine time to survey your customers about how they want to interact with you, what questions they have, what they've enjoyed about interacting with you over the last 2 months, what they're looking forward to doing now that Iowa is opening back up. But just to get a pulse on sort of where they're thinking and feeling. And if nothing else, even if I believe that no survey data is invaluable. I think you always learn something. But let's just say that it was not valuable to you. There will be value in the fact that you demonstrated that you care about how they feel because you asked. So there's no downside to doing a customer survey of some kind. And again, you can do it super simple. You can use, SurveyMonkey and just send out a link. You can share that link on social channels. So this is not something, I'm not suggesting you hire a research firm to do this. I'm just saying, just take a pulse of your community. And one of the other things that I think is super important for us to recognize is, and this is not new, but it's going to be exaggerated right now, is expectations on the customer side are not always equal. So for example, they may expect you to do things like wear a mask, even though they're not. And you're going to have to decide, especially if you are an establishment that interacts with your customers face to face. So they're coming into your home, if you will, your place of business. This is very much your place, your rules, but also your consequences. So I think this is not a time to wing any of these things. This is a time for you and your team to sit down and really talk about how you want to handle all kinds of scenarios. And we'll get into in a minute. I'll talk about sort of how and when to have some of those conversations. But you don't want to wing this. You want to decide really what are the rules, and then we're going to communicate them out to our customers. But know that their rules may be different than yours, and you have to decide what are boundaries, what are really rules for your organization, and what are suggestions. And we'll talk about that in just a sec. So here are some facts. Research is super clear that how businesses survive really any economic time, good or bad, but especially during a recession, is all about customer service. This is all about re-engaging with your customers, earning new customers, but it's really about brand loyalty. And it's all going to be especially because we're so rubbed raw. This is all going to be about how people feel. And so that's really got to be your focus. So they would much rather wait another week to get a product than feel unsafe or that you weren't excited to see them or whatever. So understand that feelings always trump our intellectual buying side, but today even more so than ever. So this is really about you figuring out how to make your customers feel all the things that you want them to feel. And we'll talk about that in a second. This is also a time, by the way, that you should be marketing to beat the band. A lot of people have gone quiet, and I'm not talking about this week where a lot of people are going quiet out of respect for what's happening with the protests. I'm talking about since March. A lot of people have gone very quiet, have stopped engaging their customers, have stopped interacting because it felt weird to sell. And I'm not suggesting that you hard sell, I'm suggesting that you communicate. There's a difference between communicating and helping and selling. And while I agree that our audiences are probably not excited about a hard sell right now, particularly right now, that doesn't mean they don't need your help. That doesn't mean they don't want to hear from you. That doesn't mean that you should let that connection get more tenuous. And, before we get into sort of the description of sort of how I think you should move forward with this and the decisions you need to make, I will say this, that owning a business is a privilege. And one of the perks of that privilege is that we should be doing work that we love for people that we love. And you are not going to make 100% of your customers or prospective customers happy. Just not going to happen. There's going to be some rule that you set that is going to grind somebody the wrong way. You really need to focus on the 20 or 30% of your customers who are worth 80 or 90% of your business and make sure that they're super happy and that they feel loved. And if somebody else outside of that circle doesn't feel it or doesn't like the way you're doing business, you're going to have to let that go. There is no way in this moment in time you're going to make everybody happy. So don't twist yourself into a pretzel trying to do that. All right, so just some statistics here for a minute. So interestingly, I think we're all thinking about how do we make people feel healthy and safe and all of that, and we absolutely have to do that. But I wanted to show you this. So the next couple slides are from a study that Accenture just put out in April, or they put it out in May. They did the research in April that I think is pretty telling. This slide really shows you that what people are more worried about is, and it's a slight more worry, but they're more worried about finances and the economy than they are their health. So I think understanding that those two worries are combining and we have to deal with both of those worries. So don't forget about the economic concerns while you're paying a lot of attention to the health concerns. And then this is, again, from that same study. These were the 5 consumer groups that they found, which I really found fascinating. So as you can see, 21% of people, and it tends to be older people, are super worried about this. They are not going anywhere. They're not willing to take chances. Odds are they're not going to come out of their house until, late summer or when there's a vaccine. And that's about 21% of the population. And then if you look at the other 4 groups, all of them are ready to come back out into the world. They just see it differently. So the individualistic person is, I know I'm doing what I need to do. And what really irritates me are people who are taking advantage of this situation, like buying up all the toilet paper or whatever. The rationalist is very much, you know what, we're doing everything we can. We hope everybody else is doing the same. So we're going to be cautious, but we're not going to hide anymore. The activist is, this is the person who is every day posting CDC statistics on their Facebook wall and sort of berating people to wear masks and all, every day. So this is somebody who feels their role is to get everyone else to change their behavior. And, that's only about 8% of the population. And then probably amongst your friends and family, you probably have met somebody who falls into this last category, which is, this is ridiculous. This is blown out of proportion. I'm not wearing a mask. Everything's fine. So the reason I'm showing you this is because these are the people who are going to be walking into your store, literally or figuratively, depending on the kind of business you have. And they all physically look the same. So you are going to meet these people, and through your conversations with them and through your interactions with them, you're going to see where they're at. So interestingly, one of the things I might ask in my customer survey is I might describe these attitudes, and I might even take it, this language out of this Accenture report, credit the report, but say, on a scale, which one of these best describes sort of how you're feeling right now, and get a sense for your customers, which group is going to be the largest, and who can you expect to walk in the door most often. One of the other things out of that study that I found really interesting was the fact that ignore the far left too, but this growing love for local. So I took great heart in this statistic that one of the silver linings of COVID has been people's realization that if we don't support local businesses, they go away. And we have certainly seen in our community and communities all across the country where companies big and small are having to shut their doors because they just couldn't make it. And so one of the outcomes of that, I think, is that people are beginning to recognize they love the diversity of the local stores in their community, and they now are more motivated to help those businesses survive. So for those of you that own local businesses, which I assume are all of you, this is good news for you. And you're going to want to play up the fact that you are local, that you've been in Des Moines a long time, how you serve the community in return as a gratitude thing for what the community gives you. But this bodes well for all of us who own and run local businesses. So let's talk a little bit more about sort of the communication side and the customer service side. Right now, you cannot over communicate with your customers. They have a million questions, and they are wondering. That's one of the biggest reasons why they're not walking in the doors, because they're uncertain. And I'm going to show you in a minute some of the things that they're uncertain about so you can communicate those. But however you normally communicate, so whether it's face-to-face, sorry, my bullet didn't go down, email, maybe picking up the phone and calling some of your best customers, certainly sending them something in the mail, whatever it is, certainly in-store signage. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But you cannot over communicate with them right now. They are, because of the anxiety about going out, because of the anxiety of doing it right. So a lot of people I've been talking to are like, okay, are you wearing masks to this kind of store or to this kind of location? Is everybody else wearing masks? Like, are people social distancing? They want to know what's to expect. So the more you can help them understand what to expect prior to them walking in the door, the more likely they are to walk in the door. But also just letting them know you're open and that you're excited to see them and all those sort of things. So now, again, back to the point of the earlier slide, now is the time for you to really over communicate and to communicate consistently. So a couple things. Nobody wants to be sold to now. We've already talked about that. Our job right now is to make them feel safe to come back to us. They desperately want, I don't know one human being that does not desperately want to get out of their house and return to some normalcy around shopping and interacting with friends and socializing and doing business the way they used to do business. I don't know anybody who's not hungry for that, but they're afraid. And so they need some help in the courage department. And honestly, where you can help them in the courage department is just by really communicating with them what to expect, what you expect, what the experience is going to be like, over and over and over again. So here's what they need and want to know. What are your hours? Because as you know, a lot of businesses are using, even before the curfew, we're using sort of truncated hours. Do I have to have a mask when I come in? Are you going to chastise me if I don't have a mask? If you require masks, are you going to provide them if I don't have one? Are there other rules like the number of people that can be in a store at a time? Those sort of things. Do I just walk in, or do I need to text you that I'm here and then you can tell me when I come in? All of these things are things that I've experienced in Des Moines, all of these different rules. And in some cases, people did communicate them to me in advance. And in other cases, I sort of blundered into them and had to figure it out as I went. And I will tell you, the ones who communicated it with me in advance made me a lot more comfortable, right? They want to know your safety protocols, and that's around cleaning and sanitizing and all that sort of thing. They also want to know, if I come in and buy something from you, are you shipping it in from China? Is there going to be a delay? Do you have product on your shelves? So is my getting what I want going to be in some way impacted? You know, or do you have new policies? Like, can I still return stuff? Or once I walk out the door with it, it's mine no matter what? And, you know, again, can I still shop remotely or the way I used to be able to shop in the last 2 months with you? So these are the kind of things right now, as people are beginning to venture out, that you need to be talking about on a regular basis, because this is the stuff that they're worried about. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what's going to make somebody come back to you and what's going to make somebody buy. And this is, there are 8 major motivators for purchase. So if you dig down below whatever you think the surface reason is that somebody does business with you, odds are there are 1 or more of these 8 that are there. And I think it's super important for you to think about your customers and really figure out what it is that, why are they buying from you? And how do you highlight what that is? So let me give you a concrete example. If you're familiar with me at all, and you've ever read it, probably anything I've ever written, you know that I am a bit of a Disneyophile. So I love Disney. I love Walt Disney World in particular. So when I looked at this and I thought, you know, what's going to make Drew go back to Disney World? It's not one thing. For me, it was 4 of the 8 were huge motivators. Vitality, it fills me up with energy to be there. Enjoyment, obviously, it's Disney World. The conviviality, just sort of the spirit of friendliness and warmth that happens there, that I really soak into my skin, and a sense of belonging. For me, Disney World, because I've been there so many times, it sort of feels like my place and everybody else is just at my place. So I feel a great kinship and belonging there. So you can go through that psychology for your customers as well and figure out why they do business with you. And then how do you highlight, how do you accentuate, how do you enhance those parts of the experience so that their endorphins are firing on all cylinders after they've interacted with you. All right, so let's talk specifically now about what I think you should be doing and how to do it. So I broke this up into before customers start coming back, or before a customer starts coming back, what needs to happen during the customer interaction, and what do you need to do after the customer interaction. And I've also broken it up with what do you need to do internally with your team, and then what do you need to do with the customer. So for the pre-visit, we're going to talk about the team first, and then we're going to talk about the customer, and then we'll go through the 3 cycles, okay? So pre-visit communications with your team. Just like your customers are anxious, so are your employees. They may be super excited to come back to work. They may need to come back to work financially. They may be feeling conflicted about coming back to work because maybe they are one of the people who would rather not leave their house till there's a vaccine, but financially they have to come back. So taking the temperature of your team and understanding sort of where they're at, super important. But there's a whole communication sequence just for internal right now. And it's super important that you don't skip this step. If you skip the internal step, I promise you the customer part is not going to go well. So they not only are nervous about coming back, but they're nervous about interacting with people. They're afraid people are going to be mad or grumpy or short-tempered. They are worried about enforcing rules that they've never had to enforce before. So a lot of conversation needs to happen right now before, even if you're open already, my guess is that people are sort of slowly trickling back in. So you have time to have these conversations. So you, the business owner, own the rules, and you need to be super clear about what you want and are willing to accept. And you need to make sure that every employee is equally clear about those boundaries. They have to have not only the same clarity around the rules, but they have to understand what they are and aren't allowed to do to enforce those rules. So can they ask someone to leave the store? Can they, how do you want them to respond and what are they allowed to do? Because they're going to be anxious about this. So you're going to want to talk about this. And I would suggest, as awkward and weird as it often is, I would suggest some role playing and scenario discussions can be super helpful. So, role playing, how do you address a customer who's not wearing a mask if one of your rules is you have to wear a mask? How do you so what do you say to a customer who's wearing a mask and is mad and starting to verbally attack another customer who's not wearing a mask if your rule is masks are optional? All of those things are going to happen. And so you've got to make sure your team is really comfortable and ready and knows how to deal with all those scenarios. And then help them imagine, and you'll do this not only before, during, but certainly after, help them imagine all of the special requests that people may ask. Like, I don't want to touch that. Will you carry it out to the car for me? Whatever it may be. And this is obviously going to depend vastly based on the kind of business that you run. But I promise you, your customers are going to ask for special requests. They're going to ask for weird things. And so the more you can brainstorm what those are and figure out how you want to respond to those, the better. More work with your team, defining your protection. So one of the things they're going to worry about is that if they enforce the rules and one of your best customers blows a gasket, are they going to get fired? So I think you being super clear about how and what you want them to say and how you want them to respond, but also that you've got their back, that as long as they're doing what they're doing in the best interest of the store and the customers, that they're not going to get into trouble. Because I promise you, this is new territory for none of us, I don't believe, have ever reopened our business right after a pandemic lockdown. So there's a whole lot of anxiety, and you're probably feeling it too, about what to expect and how to react. So your employees are feeling it worse because if you react badly, nobody's firing you. I mean, the customer may fire you, but you're not going to lose your job. They, despite how awesome you are and how long they've worked for you, I promise you that's a worry that they have. So make sure that you reassure them, whatever your boundaries are, about what they're allowed to do. And then also, and I know I don't need to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Make sure that you're checking in with them personally. They've got a lot more than normal going on. I've been talking to a lot of my clients who have 20-somethings working for them, and their anxiety level is through the roof. They've never experienced anything like this. And so a lot of them are afraid of their own shadow. They're afraid to leave their house. They're afraid not to leave their house. They're afraid they're going to lose their job. They're afraid that, we're going to go into a depression that's going to last a decade. They just have gotten themselves very worked up over this. And so depending on the age group and the maturity of your employees, you're going to have to sort of play that by ear, but certainly being compassionate about what's going on outside of work in their world is not only just being a kind human being, but it's smart in terms of you understanding sort of what you're dealing with on the floor. And I think getting them to talk in a group or individually about their concerns and their excitement and how are they feeling about coming back and what can you do to make that a better experience for them is a good conversation to have. All right, so pre-visit with your customers. As best you can, describe the experience that they're about to have before they get there. So helping them understand what the experience is going to be so they know what to expect. If you can use visuals, show them pictures. So if you've rearranged your location to accommodate social distancing, if you've got stickers on the floor to help people stay 6 feet apart, if you are asking people to park in a certain place and then text you when they want to come into your location, whatever it is, tell them and show them as best you can so they can literally picture in their head exactly how this is going to work. An FAQ on your website or your Facebook page, super helpful. And the more you get questions, add to that FAQ so that you are populating it with whatever you're actually being asked. Be super clear about what are suggestions like we'd like to suggest you wear a mask versus you will not be allowed in the store if you don't have a mask on, or whatever that rule is. And again, the survey would be insightful, a sign of caring, and I just think smart. But the pre-communications is, and I'm not talking about marketing communications. You may be still talking to them about your products or your services, but I would be doing specific communications about when you come to see us again, whenever you're ready to come to see us again, here's what you can expect, and then walking them through what that experience will be like. Mike, I'm going to stop just for a quick second. Any questions?
Not at this point, Drew. We
okay.
haven't any questions.
All right. So now we've got people in our store or in our location. So we are now interacting with a customer. So with your team, help them enforce the rules with lots of visual cues, specific language to use with your customers. So for example, being able to say, hi, welcome back, welcome to the store. If you have a mask, we would love you to put it on, is different than, hi, welcome to the store. I'm so sorry, but you have to have a mask to walk in the store. Do you need one? We've got some back behind the counter or whatever, right? Very specific language that communicates rule versus suggestion. So giving your team that language to use and practicing it with them so that they don't have to think on the spot when they're already feeling a lot of pressure, good. They are absolutely going to be watching you. They always do. This is not new to the pandemic, but they're absolutely going to be watching you. And so how you interact with customers, how you model the rules, how you enforce the rules is exactly how they're going to do it when you're not there. So be mindful that you have a lot of watchful eyes on you if you have team members on site with you at the same time. Make sure you're catching them doing it right and thanking them and sort of calling out that proper behavior. Make sure that you are celebrating when they are both making your customers feel welcome, but also sort of enforcing whatever rules you may have. And again, as I've said before, this is going to require a lot of grace. None of us have done this before. You are not going to do it perfectly. You are going to tick off a customer. You are going to have an employee cry because they're feeling a lot of pressure or whatever. And this is all going to happen. And the more you just get ready for it and the more you can handle it with grace and maybe a little bit of humor, the better. On-site with your customers, this is critical. Tell them again, and then tell them one more time, what are the rules? So signage outside of your store, signage on your store's door, telling them again when you greet them, like every way possible, repeat. We know that that's critical in marketing anyway. It's more critical today in terms of creating a great experience for them. Where can they sit? Where can they not sit? What can they touch? What can they not touch? All of those things are going to be critical to communicate and over communicate. And again, the more of their senses that you can involve, the better. So that they hear it, that they see it, the better. I mean, I don't think probably smell-o-vision makes sense, but other than that, the more places you can appeal to more of their senses, the better. And visual is always going to trump everything else. So the more visually with signage or examples that you can give them, the better. The more you can keep this simple, the better. So the more you can simplify their interactions with you and clarify. So this is all about removing confusion and fear. So when I feel uncomfortable because I'm not quite sure what to do, that elevates all my other emotions. So the more you can tamp that down for me by showing me exactly what to do, by having a path through your store clearly carved out, by sending me those photos in advance and saying, hey, you have an appointment to get your hair cut tomorrow. Here's what it's going to look like. Here's what we need you to do. And just spelling it out for me, the better, right? Where do I go to check out? All of those things. You need to assume that your customers have no idea how to interact with you in your location. And you need to tell them exactly how to do that. And again, I'm assuming most of you have a physical location. If you don't, let's say you go to your customers, then it's the reverse. Then it's a, hey, I'm coming to see you. I haven't come to see you in 2.5 months. How do you want me to behave? Do you want me to wear a mask? Do you want me to text you before I come in? So if you're coming onto their premise, you now have to ask all the questions that I've been telling you that you need to tell if they're coming to your place. So it's sort of the host gets to decide how things go. So if you're a salesperson and you're going to call on someone, this deck will give you the questions to ask so that you know that you're behaving appropriately. And I know this should go without saying, but everybody is so hepped up right now. Make sure that you and your team make it clear that you are excited to see these people, that as excited as they are to get out of their house, you are excited that of all the places they could go to, they came to you. So be super excited that they're, be grateful. And remember, they don't see your smile anymore, odds are, if you're wearing a mask. So you've got it, this is sort of like being on stage in the theater, right? You got to project much more than you would in a normal one-on-one interaction. So your expressions have to be bigger, your eyes have to tell the story, your vocal tone has to do a lot of the work. So make sure that you're making people feel welcome. So I had to go to a establishment to mail something. It wasn't the post office, but I had to go to a place to ship something. And I sort of felt like they were not excited to even be open, right? That they weren't welcoming. They were very sort of rigid about the rules and the way they described the rules. So there was no warmth, there was no welcome. They weren't smiling, they didn't look happy. The greeting was pretty flat. And you know what? I didn't feel like I should be there. And so if I have to ship something else, I'm not going back there. That's where I've always gone, but I'm not going back there until all this blows over, even though it's convenient, close to me and all of that, because I didn't get a sense that they wanted to be there or they wanted me to be there. And on top of everything else we're all feeling, nobody needs that, right? Okay, so now they visited, right? The store is closed. Now what do you do with your team? First of all, celebrate the wins, big or small. We're open, we had customers, we made sales. It was great to see so-and-so and talk to them about their kids. It was great to see some old customers that we have relationships with. Any compliments you get through social media or other places, make sure you're sharing them with your team, and tell good stories. This is a time to reinforce that we're doing this well and right, and to get your team excited about coming back tomorrow. Bringing them together, again, whether that's physically or you're doing Zoom meetings with your team after the store is open, or maybe everybody is never in the store at the same time, find a way to bring folks together and to sort of talk about their experiences, share stories, share what worked, what didn't work, to get people to follow the rules. This is a time for communal learning and team building, and you're going to have to drive that. Be sure you aren't just talking about work. Again, care about what's going on with their world outside of work, and make sure they understand and that you understand. This is all going to be about adapting and evolving in real time. That how customers are the first time they come in is going to be very different than how they are the fourth time they come in, because just the familiarity and the comfort and all of that. I think a lot of people who are just starting to venture out of their house, the whole idea of venturing out and dealing with the social distancing and not wanting to do it wrong or being irritated that they have to do it at all, wherever they are on that spectrum, makes the experience sort of anxiety filled. But the more they do it, the more comfortable they get, then the less they worry about it and the more comfortable they are coming back. And so you're going to have to kind of adapt and evolve as your customer base adapts and evolves to this new temporary abnormal. In terms of with your customers after they've visited, make sure that you're reaching out as best you can. Hopefully you've got a way to communicate with your customers. And if not, then do it through an email blast or social media or something, but thanking them for coming back, giving them a reason to do so again, asking them to come on back, but being really grateful that they ventured out and came to see you. and that they are demonstrating their loyalty to your business, and that you're appreciative of that. And then also, again, asking them for feedback. So what was it like to be back in the store? What else could we have done? How well did we communicate what you could expect? All those sort of things. The more you can be doing that, the better. Because they're going to have opinions. And it's better for them to tell you their opinions than to share them, all over social media or wherever that may be. All right. A couple things I want to warn you about. So if you were able to do something, and the easiest example I could come up with, which probably talks a little bit about how I've been consuming my favorite beverages during this lockdown. So if you're able to do something during the shutdown, like you can't, and that at some point you're not allowed to do anymore, like to-go liquor. Like if you were able to give me a margarita in a to-go cup because of the lockdown, and at a certain point in time, the rules change and you're no longer able to do it. So whether that's a delivery model, whether it's a discount, whatever it is, be sure that you over communicate two things. One, we can't do it anymore. And two, why? We can't let you come get margaritas anymore because the governor has rescinded the law or the rule that said we could, whatever it is. So not only what you can and can't do, but why you can or can't do it. Especially if it's something that your customers really liked about how you were handling things during the lockdown. I think the more you can listen and observe and ask for feedback and ask questions, the better. Understanding and recognizing the frailty that I've been talking about earlier in our conversation, and realizing that everybody is on edge. So the more you can listen and learn about how they're feeling and what you can do to ease any discomfort that they have to the extent that you can, the better. And I think that also is a great way to build a bond between you and the customer. And I would be super careful about absolutes. I would not be saying we will or won't be doing anything, period. I would be very cautious about my language around whatever you're talking about. Things are not done shifting. And I believe that how we did business for the last 2 months is now shifting. How we do business for the next 6 to 8 weeks is going to keep shifting. And it's going to keep shifting back to what eventually will be new normal, but we're nowhere near new normal now. So I would be super cautious about not putting caveats in any statements that you make. And I guess my last piece of advice before I ask for questions is, I think this is a huge opportunity for us to love our customers and our employees well. And I think that there is great opportunity to demonstrate our genuine compassion and caring and affection for both our team and our customers. And I believe this with all my heart, pandemic or not, but brands that lead with their heart, that genuinely care about the people they serve and the team that helps them serve them, I believe those are the brands that win every day. But I think right now that's even magnified more. So the more caring and compassionate you can be, the more you go at this in terms of what's best for the team and what's best for the customer, the more likely you are to win the day. All right. Okay. Here's 8 million ways to get a hold of me. I know you'll get the deck as part of the replay, so I'm not going to sit on this slide for very long. Any questions for me? And I'm going to stop sharing my deck so I can actually see you. Okay.
Drew, while we're waiting for some questions to come in, have you had a good experience since you went back out during COVID? Have you seen somebody do something really right that we're like, hey, that's pretty darn cool?
Yeah. I've had more right experiences than the bad shipping experience I described. And it's really, honestly, it's about clarity of how to do it. And it's about how I felt when I walked in the door. So if you really make it clear for me how I should interact with you when I get there and what I can expect, and then you are genuinely happy to see me and you make me feel welcome, and the shopping experience itself or the interaction, whether it's a restaurant or whatever it is pleasant, is what it meets or exceeds my expectation, and it makes me feel as normal as any of us can feel right now. That's a huge win, and those are the places I will go back to.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've seen some things happen. I've gone out to several restaurants recently, and I think most of them are handling it absolutely well. But you can definitely tell the difference when you get in certain environments where I walked into one the other day and it's like nobody had a mask on.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I want to be here, so I left.
Right.
It's
Right.
nothing against the restaurant, just lots of people in no mask.
But what's interesting though, because I was in a restaurant, as I mentioned earlier this week, and um, I had said to my friends, okay, are we mask, no mask, and are we hug, no hug? That was what I wanted to know. Like, how are we going to interact? Even with my friends, I'm asking, like, what are the new rules? So we all agreed that we were going to wear masks till we got to the table, and not that anybody cares, but we agreed that we were going to hug each other. Um, and so we did that, and everybody in the restaurant had masks on. But then we took our masks off, like everybody else did in the restaurant. And I watched as people got up and started to leave the restaurant. So we're expecting the restaurant workers to all have masks on, but nobody put their mask on. And I had to stop and remember to put my mask on because I was watching other people. But even I, when I got up from the table, started to walk up to pay my bill without a mask on. So it's also interesting that, again, their expectations of us and our expectations of them are different.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not seeing any other questions coming through, Drew. That means you nailed it as usual.
Well,
So,
I'm happy to, if any of you have questions later, you've got my email address in the deck. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have that maybe you don't want to ask in front of the group.
yeah, and I would just say to everybody out there, um, don't hesitate to send questions in after the fact. If you think of something and you can't find Drew's connection, even though it'll be in the deck, don't hesitate to reach out to anybody at the partnership. We're here to help.
Yeah.
And take a look at our website, dsmpartnership.com/DSM forward. We're pushing a lot of information out there. It's pretty valuable stuff too. And
Yeah, it's been
a lot
great
of it's coming,
information.
yeah, a lot of it's coming from business experts. It's been a lot of fun to get. I've gotten to know a lot of great experts in the community. Boy, we've got some real talent here.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, I want to thank you, Drew, and thank you all the attendees. I will be dropping an email on all of you this afternoon with Drew's presentation and a link to that research report that he provided.
You bet. And, again, if you're not the business owner, please feel free to share this deck with your boss. And if they have questions, I'm happy to answer those as well. So we're all just trying to figure out how to do this. And again, if you're not the boss, remember your boss probably has not gone through a pandemic either. So we are all making this up as we go. And we're bound to make some mistakes, but I think everybody's hearts are in the right place. But I'm happy to be helpful if I can be.
I appreciate that. Okay, well, we'll wrap the call up. Thanks again, everybody, and have a wonderful day.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Take care. Bye-bye.